Requesting people to take the seats at the front as well. Come ahead. Welcome back, everyone. So just a note, in case you are leaving and not attending tomorrow's session, please drop off your lanyards at the bin on the way out. We'll be reusing them. Okay. So we now have a very special session titled Energy Efficiency Matters, Conversation with Changemakers. The session is designed as a press conference style interactive discussion, and it will be bringing together influential leaders to address pertinent questions from a diverse audience. The format emphasizes engagement, allowing industry stakeholders, media representatives, and civil society members to gain insights into actionable solutions and real-world challenges in advancing energy efficiency. We will begin with the moderator asking the first round of questions. Following this, the floor round, if you want to ask your question there, and you can also scan the QR code and ask your question on Mentimeter, so whatever you are more comfortable with. We are thrilled to welcome our moderator and esteemed panelists. I'd like to call Ms. Neha Dhingra, Director of CLASP India, on stage as our moderator, Mr. Brian Dean, Director of Energy Transition at Sustainable Energy for All, Ms. Motushi Sengupta, co-founder One World Collab Private Limited, Mr. Venkat Garimella, chairperson of AEEE and vice president, Schneider Electric India. Let's have an engaging discussion.
Hello. First of all, I would like to thank AEEE team for initiating conversation on such an important topic. I would like to thank them for inviting me to be the session chair. I'm Neha Dhingra, I'm the director for CLASP India program, and thank you to all the speakers for joining us in this discussion. As you just heard, the discussion, it's going to be more of a discussion-oriented session. I'll start with one key question to each of the speakers, and then it will be open to everybody for questions. So please engage as much as you can. I'll start with a very brief context. And since the morning you all have heard enough about the importance of energy efficiency, I'll just start with two key stats. So and facts. One, energy efficiency is one of the most cost-effective instruments to drive and manage rising energy consumption. It is also one of the key instruments and enablers in India meeting its energy intensity and has played a pivotal role. It has resulted in India meeting 20% of its energy intensity reduction in the last decade or so. With India and all the other countries signing up for doubling energy efficiency, it is going to play a key role in helping us meet our national climate goals, both NDCs by 2030 as well as our net zero goals by 2070. So with all of these targets that lie in front of us, there's a need to ramp up ambition and this role of energy efficiency. With that, I would like to turn to the first speaker, Brian. Brian, if you could share your thoughts around you've been working on the global trends on energy efficiency. So what is it like? Where do you think different countries are at, where India is at, and where do you think are some of the steps that need to be taken in order to meet this transformative upgrade that we all are looking at to meet the doubling energy efficiency goals?
Okay, great, thank you. My name is Brian Dean. I'm Director of Energy Transition at Sustainable Energy for All. And India actually is it's a wealthy country of knowledge and know-how, right? And the ability to take information and turn it into business. And that's what I see that energy efficiency really is. And so there's an opportunity in this country. It will make our lives better. It will be business opportunities. And I've seen India evolve a ton since when I originally moved here 15, 20 years ago. it was 2007 actually, so 18 years ago when I moved here the first time. India was evolving quickly because it was ready to host the Commonwealth Games. There was no metro. There was no fancy malls, and the airports were all old at the time. The amount of investment that has happened in India since 2007 up until 2010 for the Commonwealth Games, and then since, is tremendous. And so what you see happening here in India is significant GDP growth and energy intensity reductions. And that's why earlier today we did see Brian Motherway showing India is certainly at a much higher rate of energy intensity improvement compared to other countries. So where do I see India going? I see India being a leader on the action side of it. We know that India takes a really strong negotiating stance, and that is for the good of the country in the long term. So it might not sign a document that says it commits to doing something, but we know India led the charge on doubling energy efficiency. That became a global commitment for many countries, and is the charge coming from here in India. And so I see India still leading the action, and continuing that growth towards what I like to call an energy efficient life. So Lifestyles for the Environment is great, and it talks about that philosophy of how we can have a better livelihood. And I think an energy efficient life brings so many benefits to us as individuals. So maybe I'll just leave it there and can add more later.
Yeah. Thank you. I just have one follow-up question before I proceed further. In your view, what are some of the low-hanging fruits or transformative steps that countries can take, including a country like India, in order to meet the goals of doubling energy efficiency? If you could just spend 2 minutes on that.
Yeah, so I think one of the lowest hanging fruit is looking at the best practices everywhere in the world. And so, standing on the shoulders of the giants before us, right? There are activities that have happened all around the world on making our buildings better, making our appliances better, making our transport systems better. And we have seen, India, just Delhi alone, the metro system is amazing now. And it went from nothing to amazing in less than 15 years. That needs to happen with super efficient appliances, BLDC fans. It needs to happen with electric vehicles. It needs to happen with super efficient windows and insulation for buildings. There are measures in every motors, of course, super efficient motors and transformers for the grids. There's a lot of low-hanging fruits that are out there that the best available technology around the world already shows us how to do it. And we know that once India gets started on something, it rapidly grows. I mean, electric buses went from 0 to 17,000 in, I think, a couple of years or something. It was very, very fast. So lots of great things are out there, and India is leading on many as well.
Thank you. I said one and I asked two.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to Muthushri. Muthushri, first of all, congratulations on your new adventure. I think I tried to do a bit of reading around that, and I think it's about collaborations, and that's one of the key principle of it. So how do you see the role of collaborations in kind of driving energy efficiency? And if you could also comment on the role of communication, storytelling in driving consumer behavior towards energy efficiency.
Thank you, Neha. So I've had the privilege of working in the space of renewable energy and looking at climate action from a mitigation lens right from 2015. And I think the amount of work which has gone on in the initial years was really impressive, including the work that AEEE took forward. Just in terms of setting the regulatory context, setting out a set of conducive policies, which could actually make action happen at different levels of government as well as the private sector as such. And over these years, I have personally come to the view that, now the focus needs to move beyond policy and regulatory. It's still very important, but to look at a different set of actions, including building collaborations, partnerships, to make those policies real on the ground, to make them active so that there is higher rate of adoption, also figuring out what needs to be done next. So I think when you look back, it is a very tough space, but I think the low-hanging fruits have already been picked. So now really looking to make those actionable on the ground. And personally speaking, that's one area that I'm really very keen to work on, because I would love to see how these collaborations really take shape on the ground, and so that we can actually scale up, create larger impact, making sure that energy efficiency policies are actually adopted. Which brings me to the second question that you had in terms of the role of communications. I think absolutely critical. There is for the policies to actually take practical shape and form. It's really, really important to create narratives which actually excite the consumer, excite the retail seller to say that this needs to be prioritized. How do you create narratives which enable that to happen, and how do you create it at scale? Because for a country of India's size and proportion, we need solutions which really talk to numbers. There is no other way of dealing with it. So for the technology to really deliver its magic, you need to have proper storytelling around it. That is how it will actually become real on the ground. So I'm really looking forward to work around both building collaborations and figuring out ways by which we can take those messages to the right set of consumers to say that this is a matter of choice, this is a matter of priority, and it's not always the ruler which is going to be required to push consumers towards energy efficient appliances. Thank you.
Thank you. We heard about regulatory aspect, we heard about the communication, now time to move towards technology. Venkat, Schneider is a global leader in energy management. And I think there is a huge opportunity for the private sector to move towards, not just move, but accelerate the transition towards energy efficiency. And you've been at the forefront of it. What do you think are some of the key opportunities and key pitfalls that private sector organizations as well as clients of Schneider should be aware of and leverage in order to kind of make this transition? So what would your advice be to the management and the other corporates, basically?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Neha, for the question, and good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be on the panel with Matushi and Brian. Yeah, this is more a Schneider question, so thanks for that. I'll speak about my Schneider experience. I've been with Schneider now for 20 years. And by the way, Schneider is in India for more than 60 years. At Schneider, our purpose is to empower everyone to make the most of the energy and resources so that we bridge progress and sustainability for all. At Schneider, we believe that there is no needed arbitrage between progress and development and mitigating climate change and sustainability challenges. Both perhaps can coexist. You can grow progress, at the same time, simultaneously, you can become more sustainable and also more decarbonized. That's the belief, that's what drives Schneider, that's what is also in every aspect of what we do, product design, the system processes, the thought processes, everything across is emanating from this purpose of our company. Private sector, what is the opportunity and how does this technology make the difference or move the needle? I think we have been discussing since morning a lot about it. What we do is focus on the demand side of the energy ecosystem. As you know, energy ecosystem, you have the supply side, wherein we talk a lot about renewable and so many other stuff there. We do a lot of talking there for sure. However, many times we don't talk as much on the demand side, and if not for forums like this, perhaps we overlook the opportunities on the demand side. So Schneider is a company which is on the demand side, and on the demand sides we work on two levers. One is how do we enable our end users to reduce the energy consumption, the whole story of energy efficiency, and I'll come to that. And the second enabler on the demand side is accelerating electrification. Perhaps we didn't talk much about that since morning, understandably, but a minute on electrification. Today, if you see the entire energy mix in the world, only 20% is electrified. Remaining 80% is not electrified. Now, what is the problem with that? The problem with this is electricity is one of those vectors of energy which can have a decarbonization impact on the demand side, thanks to all the tech on efficiency, also on the supply side by having renewable. So that is the beauty of electrification or the energy of electricity. So as Schneider, we work on both these areas. Specifically on energy efficiency, well, there are huge opportunities in India. We believe any, let's say, industry, any best-in-class energy efficient building can be 50% more efficient than a normal average building. Best-in-class energy efficient manufacturing unit can be at least 30% more efficient than average average industry. So there is a huge opportunity across the sectors that we work, and all of them are very, very important for a country like India. We're going to build so many buildings, so many homes, so much of metro transport, so much of these things are going to come up. So it is very, very important to have the tech which will make the new build more efficient. And by the way, let's not forget the old stock, the aging or the legacy building or the infrastructure that we have. Our story here is to bring in the element of digitization. Now look at energy efficiency. First of all, energy is not visible, and energy efficiency is the absence of invisible. You know, going back to your story and animating this whole concept, digitization actually makes it a little better. You are able to see it, you are able to manage it, you are able to harness the data, put the data into AI engines, and then it all starts. So we work towards providing active energy efficiency solutions enabled by digital technology. So that's the play, and this kind of uncovers huge opportunities on a dynamic basis throughout the life cycle of the infrastructure. And I think I'll stop it here, and maybe we come back again as we go deeper. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, staying true to the format of the session, we've received some questions from the audience. I'll try to pick a few which are relevant to the discussion. So, Brian, you spoke about the importance of bringing in global best practices, and that's a very low-hanging fruit. So the question is that how can global best practices in energy efficiency, particularly in building policies and investments, be adapted to accelerate India's energy transition while addressing local issues? So how do you basically bring in global best while taking care of the local needs?
Yeah, it's, you know, the local context is an interesting one because a lot of times there are things that we do just because we've done it for generations that actually people didn't do the generations before that. You know, when you think about the Mughal construction around Delhi, actually they had cooling. You know, they had waterways that went through their facilities to cool. And they had tall ceilings and tall windows to get good airflow. They used thermal mass to retain the coolness. They designed with energy efficient passive technologies. We lost that for generations, and then we got stuck on not doing it, and then we got stuck into the pure air conditioning route. And now I think we have an opportunity to learn from all of those, and really even just taking the best practices here in India. But beyond that, you know, there are things like concrete construction, right? And doing sort of light concrete construction without any insulation. And, you know, the residential, the ECBC-R, the residential version of the building code, it gives a method for understanding and you know, assessing the value of changing from a pure concrete construction to actually having insulation. And so sometimes it's policy will guide us along the way. Sometimes it's technology evolutions that'll guide us along the way. But hopefully ultimately what it is everybody here in the room that has certain knowledge to support the market in becoming more energy efficient. And I think together, and this is what I don't know how many of you know about mission efficiency, but it's an ecosystem approach globally on energy efficiency, and recognizing that we all need to elevate each other. We all need to elevate those that are doing important things on energy efficiency. And so there's too much for any one organization to actually deliver on this energy transition and energy efficiency and learning from these best practices. So if we can elevate our partners, if we can elevate the government in having better policies, ultimately we will make changes faster than we have in prior generations. And I think that's what needs to happen here. Well, every country in the world. We need to evolve in a way that we learn from the past, learn from our failures, learn from and the successes that others have had. And this is what that term that I used, standing on the shoulders of giants, because anybody that's done really amazing work, say Schneider in India for the last 60 years, they're a giant, right? And other partners can learn from what Schneider has done. We can all learn and stand on the shoulders of Schneider, if I'll say it that way.
Thank you. I just want to add to that response also, because at CLASP we've been working very extensively on that particular subject, basically bringing in global best practices. But at the same time, it is also important to tailor it to the local conditions, looking at socioeconomic conditions, looking at the temperature conditions and all the things that we have. I think that bit is very, very important. You can't just bring in international best practices and just put them here. So that contextualization bit, I think that is very, very relevant. The next question that I have is, energy efficiency is key to an equitable energy transition, yet it remains confined to select discussions like these. What are some of the disruptive strategies to make it seamless part of people's lives? And I'm looking at Mothushi, but anybody feel free to kind of comment on that.
It's a big question. I'll give it a go. I think there is growing acknowledgement of the fact that, that the type of lifestyles that we were earlier heading towards are not sustainable in the long run, and so it needs to grow out. But I do want to acknowledge the person who has put this question to say that much more needs to be done in this, so that we can take the message of energy efficiency to larger audiences as such. What we don't often consider is the level of advertising, the level of communications that go towards pushing a lifestyle, pushing for consumption patterns which are hugely energy intensive. On the other hand, if you see the alternative, there is very little going behind that as such, except to say your good sense, right? So it's not a very equal equation, in that sense as such. And how do you actually utilize platforms, collaborations? How do you utilize, opinion makers, influencers? And there are influencers out there who would be very keen to engage in this conversation, to spread the message, to take the conversation there. I think that's a missing piece at this point in time, and we need to really start leveraging that in earnest.
So I feel like one of the things that we need is disruption. And, this energy efficiency crowd, everybody in here is nice people, right? We're not instigating trouble, right? Do we need to instigate trouble? Who is our rival? If energy efficiency is all this great thing, why haven't we been able to have it completely take over? I think it was said earlier today that renewables are not a competitor to energy efficiency, but well then who is the competitor to energy efficiency, and what trouble do we need to raise with them to show what it is that energy efficiency can do that they can't? And I feel like there's something that's needed there in terms of...
I'd agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think Padu was mentioning earlier today just instigating trouble. And I think if we can, think about how our communications should change for that, I think it's may be very relevant for the years ahead on energy efficiency.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to open it up to the audience for any questions that you may have for the speakers.
My name is Dr. Saurav Verma. I research on green buildings. So my question to the panel is, in developing and emerging countries like India, we are focusing on operational energy in terms of buildings. What about, embodied side? How we are doing compared to other countries? And is there a need to do more on the embodied side? If the panel can share their views. Thank you.
Maybe I'll just start off quickly on the embodied energy side of this. And it was mentioned earlier today that the cement industry can learn a lot from global best practice on cement. And that means that if the cement industry is more energy intensive than it could be, then we have an opportunity to reduce our embodied energy of a building if we are using more sustainably sourced cement. Same thing with steel, same thing with aluminum, glass, the whole value chain. And most purchasing decisions that are made after a building is designed during the construction document phase, the materials that are selected are not selected based on where the materials are sourced, whether it has a label that says it's low embodied carbon. And, so there needs to be labeling, there needs to be a policy, there needs to be some financial difference. The whole Make in India campaign was really great for one reason I really like, which is buy local. You make it in India, you sell it in India, and you've created, a greener value chain. We need to do the same thing with building materials. We need it to be obviously made here, but also innovated and labeled here with transparency on how much energy it took to bring those materials to the site and to build the building and everything else. So anyway, a number of random thoughts, but yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a very important point, and maybe I'll give the example of what we are doing at Schneider. This kind of forms the part of our Scope 3 emissions. And Scope 3, as you know, we have upstream and downstream, so this is part of our upstream Scope 3 emissions. So clearly, a very strong engagement with our suppliers to see how we can help them to decarbonize. And at Schneider, we kind of took this initiative of reducing the emissions of our top 1,000 suppliers by 50% by 2025. We launched this a couple of years back, and we are, end of last year, close to about 34% decarbonization happening in this top 1,000 suppliers. And I think we will achieve that. And I think that's the easy part. The next journey or the next phase is where it's going to be difficult. But we remain invested, we remain focused, and we continue to prioritize this. This is all about top 1,000 suppliers worldwide, and they are large companies with access to tech, with access to finance, and a lot of other resources at their disposal. The issue is when you have suppliers who are MSMEs, right? When you have very small suppliers, this is where the issue comes in. And that's where the needle doesn't move that fast. How do we do it? Frankly, I don't have an answer. But going back to the earlier question, till energy efficiency becomes a much more mass, or becomes a mass movement and cuts across every level of the business community, every level of civil society, you will not see the needle moving. And that's what Brian was talking about, mission efficiency. I think time has come now to elevate this whole conversation to that level. And even at AEEE, we are striving to do that, right? We, at AEEE, our agenda is how do we engage, how do we orchestrate the engagement of the three sectors, government, policy makers, industry, and more importantly, civil society. So the moment we are at that level, you see things moving fast at scale, and I think we all have to make efforts. So that's what I would say. May not be a very clear, pointed answer, but this is pretty much what I think.
Yeah. My name is Bhaskar from AEEE. While surfing through many of these efficiency websites, on one of the Schneider websites, I came across a quiz for sustainability and energy efficiency. Very interesting site that has, and now I get regular emails every 2 weeks on Gyan on energy efficiency and sustainability. But the important thing is the sustainability, the Schneider app has more than 500,000 downloads. The BEE appliance app has several thousand downloads. Something seriously wrong. Any thoughts on how I can even get the BEE app or efficiency apps to go to 1 lakh downloads or things of that sort? I think it's very important for us all to figure out how to get there.
No, sorry, I don't have an answer for that, but yeah, you see the downloads of DeepSeek, phenomenal. In last, it was the largest app on the App Store to be downloaded in last few days. It's gone viral. This is all about virality. Can energy efficiency app, some bit of knowledge stuff on this can be viral? Is there need for it to be viral? I think these are the questions that we need to answer. Again, going back and narrowing your question to Schneider, we are about 150,000 employees worldwide, and we really work hard to bring in a lot of education on these topics. Not many institutes where we studied when we were growing up had these topics as the curriculum. So we recognize that. So internally, there are many modules online, and there are also, each of our sites have got some of the best, let's say, technology centers where we can come and feel and spend some time and learn. A lot of investments have gone behind putting this whole infrastructure of learning. We at Schneider also work as part of our CSR, and maybe Matushi, you'll be interested to know this. We work on providing skilling in these areas of energy management. Energy management in buildings, energy management in homes, industrial energy management, and energy management in data centers. So we have, these are very basic level of infrastructure that we have created. We have the curriculum, we have the labs, and we partner with the organization who give us the real estate to put this up and mobilize the students. So as we speak, we have close to about 550 odd skilling centers. This helps. What is the impact? Why do we do that? This provides the vocational skilling capability to the youth, and then hence they become more independent financially, all in the space of energy. So you are right. There is a big need to, again, going back to my earlier point of making this a mass movement. And India is a large country for anything and everything, and perhaps the biggest opportunity and the potential to do this is in this country. It is largely technical. Even in this forum today and tomorrow, there are a lot of technical conversations, which is fine, beautiful, welcome. But at some point in time, we also have to make it more easy, more simpler, more appealing, more, let's say, everyone for them to really come on board and contribute. We run a very interesting school program at Schneider. We do about 50, 60 schools every year. The idea is basically to go and make those young children, 5th grade to 9th grade, we want to make them we call them energy warriors. In fact, it's a very high engaging program which we do for 6 months, and after the end of the program, they are certified as energy warriors. So these things are very, very important. You picked it up very well. In this age of phone and digital and apps, can we leverage this to make it a mass, let's say, program on energy efficiency, knowledge on energy efficiency, practical tips on energy efficiency? Who will do it is a question. What does it take to do it is a question, but I think we have to answer this question.
Can I just add to that? Wonderful to see you again. I feel that, that is where we have still not reached in terms of creating the right narratives. Because in a way, for a country like India where price sensitivity is so high, the consumer before making a purchase gets much more drawn to the price factor than anything else, even now. So how do you enable storytelling? How do you enable narrative building to say that the investments that are required for energy efficient lifestyles or appliances, how do they actually meet their other goals as well? And that is where I think the communication strategy needs to focus quite deeply. It is a communication issue, and I think the fact that we are aware of it also tells me that we should do something about it very soon.
Hi. I have a very linked question. I'm Supriya and I lead communications at IEEE. We're talking about who will do it and how it will happen. I want you to answer, like, if we have to do this one viral mass communication movement on energy efficiency, what is that one technology or one idea that has the potential in this moment to appeal to not just to consumers, but also the industry and the government?
I think one of the topics of the world right now is cooling, right? So thermal comfort. I think that there's communicating around the quality of our lives and our own thermal comfort. Anybody cold here, by the way? Want the temperature to go up a little? We got any Schneider sensors in here? And I think even just changing the way we talk about thermal comfort, particularly in 5-star hotels, would be a really interesting one. I got to my Hyatt hotel and the room was 13 degrees. I don't even know how they got it that cold. But because I arrived so late at night, the AC was just running full speed ahead. And it took me a couple days to warm the room back up to 18 degrees. Hopefully it's still warming up. But yeah, I think cooling is a really important topic here in India and globally, actually.
I would agree with that. I think when actions actually create an impact on the daily lives of the people that we are talking about, whether it's managing cooling or managing really extreme cold, then I think there is a higher probability of accepting that and adopting practices which can make things easier as such. What is clear is that we need storylines which sort of speak to the individual, the household, as well as the community. And how do you create those storylines which can actually make sense and not necessarily, we may end up with different sets of storylines, but I would completely agree. I think this is definitely an easy entry point where cooling can, and its impact on health, its impact on livelihoods, impact on, just the way people live their lives is so huge that, it can be an easy entry point, I feel.
Yeah, I think, I know, maybe a short one. Cooling as a, let's say, end-use part of the overall energy system, if you ask me, the target audience should be homes. Enough of all the corporatization of energy efficiency conversation and making it more, let's say, more technical. Enough of all that. I think we should go to homes. When you go to homes, the stakeholders are children, you have, let's say, homemaker, you have, we all know what homes are all about. I think that's where is a big potential, and that's where we can have a significant impact. They should be the target audience. This, I'm talking about my experience when we do the school programs, children in the schools which are enrolled for this school program, they have a very, very transformative effect. They become energy warriors, and we give a lot of interesting exercises. Okay, you have to, and then by the way, we also, it's a competition, so there is a lot of competitive spirit. So one of the exercises is you submit your electricity bill of your home month 1, and month 4 you have to see how your electricity bill has gone down, right? And then some kids then do it not for their homes but also their neighbor's home, right? And also there is an exercise where the school electricity bill also has to come down. So these are all the kind of programs we do, and children are super excited. And once they do this, you can imagine the change they will bring in their homes when they grow up, in their professional journey, in whatever they do as they grow up. So I think homes is where we should have a very strategic, very targeted, a very strong communication to get them on board, and I think you'll have a multiplier effect. So that's my intervention.
Yeah, I have a question, and thank you so much. These were really great thoughts. I'm Sumed Agarwal, representing AEEE. So energy efficiency is always considered as, unsung hero of the climate action, a backbone of sustainability, but always flying under the radar. Politicians also know. So my question is, what needs to be done that we can create Bureau of Energy Efficiency in each state? Any practices, any ideas, if you can? I'm still scratching my head if you can provide anything.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this is that you said energy efficiency is the backbone, and it really is. When you think about the recent global commitments, there's the tripling renewables, doubling efficiency, there's the energy storage, and the grids, and cooling as well. There's 5 different pledges, you can say. The efficiency one is the one that enables all of the other ones, and because if you don't do the efficiency, if you're just tripling renewables, you're actually not going to get ahead, because the energy growth needs, the tripling renewables would just keep up with demand. It wouldn't actually improve the sustainability very much. And so I think if there's that recognition that if energy efficiency doesn't happen, we will need to do 6-fold on renewables, or we will need to, and then how do you fit that 6-fold of renewables onto the grids? And then how do you deal with the demand spikes without energy efficiency? And then you need a lot more storage. And then because it's inefficient, say, cooling, if you're not meeting the cooling pledge as well, and efficiency together, then the spikes in the utilities just become too much, and you can kind of destabilize the whole grid. So there needs to be a mental recognition that, like you said, it's the backbone, but fundamentally it means that you're spinning your wheels if you don't do energy efficiency. So how do you get it at the state level? I think that's a really good question. Obviously the state level energy efficiency action plans are a good start. Obviously, we'll see where the change in leadership is with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. I think that gives us an opportunity, a moment in time in terms of this idea of delivering action that will give us, it gives us a moment in time where we can consider this at the state level, actually having dedicated professionals working day in, day out in every state as a bureau.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so I'll just pick up on a couple of themes that I think all of you have discussed. I just want to go back like maybe 5-6 years, and I think when India was developing its India Cooling Action Plan, the buzzword around the world was cooling. And when we were having deliberations and discussions, and AEEE was very thick into it, and we came up with the idea that I think is cooling really, I think, is something that we should strive for, or should we strive for thermal comfort? And I think that was immediately picked up by everybody, and not least the government. And they said, we have to use thermal comfort for all and not cooling for all. And I think it's very insightful, because I think maybe some people will say, hey, it's just semantics. But I don't think it's just semantics. It's also about, I think, the ethos of India. It's also why India came out with life. And I think all these things are linked in many ways. And when you are striving for cooling for all, then there is an underlying assumption that I think you have to develop and you have to build a very energy intensive, I think, infrastructure which is going to provide cooling for everybody. And I think the paradigm for how do you design buildings, whether it's net zero or integrated building design, I feel if you put thermal comfort out there, then I think this whole thing starts to change. So I think that's one very, very important thing. The other piece, I think, and I would like to hear from all of you, I think Venkat is talking about home. That's where I think we spend so much time. But if we really think about home, about 60 to 70% of, I think, India's population is living in very, very oppressive, I think, home conditions. We can talk, not even thermal comfort is basically out of reach for most of these people. And when we talk about efficiency, we are talking about the narratives, and I think we are talking about communication. But fact of the matter is that I think from a quality of life issue, from sleep issue, there are horror stories that people are taking sleeping pills in slums to actually go to sleep because they cannot sleep because of the heat. So we still, I think, have a fairly challenging, I think, problem that we are steering. And energy efficiency sometimes gets a bad rap because people feel that, oh, this is for middle class. Oh, this is for actually the upper middle class. What are you really doing to help, I think, improve the lives of the poor and unprivileged? And I think some of the things that is very interesting, we are working on a World Bank problem. World Bank, of course, has funded large power plant projects, but now it is funding affordable housing projects. How do we actually make buildings, how do we build it right? We don't build like net zero energy building, but how do we build affordable housing right? So I think, I know that it's a slightly long-winded thing, but these are some of the things that sort of bothers me. I think we work on it within the organization, and a lot of people are concerned about these things. So how do we see energy efficiency making a much bigger effort, not for the middle class people, but for the poor and the, I think, vulnerable sections of the society, because they are feeling the brunt of climate change and heat stress right now. Thanks.
So tons of great points there, Satish, and I fully agree that having a narrative directly for thermal comfort for all is essential. Interestingly, though, our Cooling for All program, it includes one third of it is the thermal comfort, but then there's also agriculture and food cold chains, and then healthcare and medicine cold chains as well. So this cooling topic is a really wide topic, and I think maybe to the point is there should be a conversation purely on thermal comfort for all. There should be a conversation on product safety through cooling for all products, basically, whether that's healthcare or food cold chains. Food waste, of course, many of you probably know, food waste alone has the emissions of the 5th largest country in the world in terms of carbon emissions. So, we can address the thermal comfort side for us as humans, but we need to address it for the food side too. But yeah, it's energy efficiency gets lost, passive gets lost in this conversation, and oftentimes you see the big funding programs come in, and they'll fund the big district cooling system, or the big mechanical cooling technologies. But if we can have the conversations purely on thermal comfort for all, we can talk about those solutions for all economic classes. How would I build a home for me no matter what economic scale I was in? Well, the first thing I would do is I would start with shade, right? I would start with really low cost paint to reflect sun. So I would start with shade, and I would start with cool roof, right? Of course I would add insulation. I would add, ideally, the design of the home or building would be set up so that I could get cross ventilation and stack ventilation. These are some of the basics that I would do in any house, whether I'm a billionaire or unfortunately living in a slum. Now, in between, of course, we then have opportunity to add on really good technologies for lower and lower middle income, like windows. That's probably lower middle income to middle income. Better windows than we have in many markets, I think is definitely possible here. Obviously insulation, and then we get to obviously the ceiling fans and or horizontal fans, and actually having those then be super efficient for the middle class 100%. Can we get the cost down such that BLDC fans can be in every slum? Can we get the cost down so that we have cool roofs in every slum? Can we get the cost down so that insulation is in every slum? I think these are really good challenges that India could actually deliver on. They're actually relatively low cost, relatively, and with some seed money, granting people the quality of life and the thermal comfort that that's a human right. I think we could get it right. So, really good question, and yeah, hand it off to others.
No, I just wanted to acknowledge, Satish, I think really great points there. I think we do need to acknowledge that the 60 to 70% who do not have proper living conditions as such, much of their life is dictated by what they perceive, what they are offered, right? So somebody, I feel that, somebody who is actually spending 14 hours, 15 hours in a workplace to come back home and then be pushed into an energy efficient lifestyle because it is good for the planet, I don't think is a fair ask of them. We need to figure out what would make sense in that context as such. So much needs to be done. I don't think I have answers to that, but I feel that, it's a different set of, factors that we are dealing with in that space as such, and what would make, energy efficiency an issue of real consequence for people living in those conditions as such. Cooling, thermal comfort, absolutely. I mean, I think if they had thermal comfort I don't have an answer, but I take your point completely to say that, we need to look at that very differently from what folks in the middle class income category face and what others face in the high income category.
Yeah, I think nothing much to add, and Satish, I completely understand where you're coming from. I think we are seeing, at least for a country like India, both these things are priority, mitigation and adaptation. Both are extremely important for a country like India. So far, all our stories, all the conversations are more on the mitigation aspect, but how do we enable all the, let's say, other part of our stakeholders to become more resilient to all the climate change impact, and that's the whole topic of adaptation. If you see, we know this, right? Close to about 20-30% population of this world are responsible for 80% of emissions. And the other big chunk of population emit only that much. And they face the biggest consequences of all the climate change impact, whether it is scarcity of water, comfort, all sorts of things. So all the more it becomes important for the energy users to be more aggressive, more ambitious on managing their energy ecosystem. I think it is our responsibility. We talk a lot about ROI, finance, models, policies. I think it is more of your moral responsibility to work on being more efficient with your consumption of energy, resources, water, and everything. This is for people in the room. This is for our kind of folks here who have a lot of, let's say, access to resources. So I would suggest that we should make this as a personal thing. I don't know how many of us in our homes are working to reduce our energy, are working to reduce our emissions. Pretty much everyone in the room, I'm sure on an average, you're annual emissions will be anywhere between 5 to 6 tons of CO2, all combined. Your scope 1, your scope 2, everything combined. And 1.5 degree lifestyle emission ask is 0.7 tons per annum by 2050. 2.2 ton of CO2 emissions per annum by 2030. All of you, including me, are far from that benchmark. It all has to start with us. We are a very privileged class. We have all that we want, and we will maybe, we will do some things here and there. But if we don't push ourselves and don't be more ambitious and strive harder, then it is going to have a significant impact to our other stakeholders, our future generations, etc., will never be called worthy ancestors. Our children, our grandchildren will look back at us saying that these selfish people, mindless people, they went about doing all nonsense. Yeah, so it all starts with us. Sorry, I'm getting a little more, ideological conversation, but I think it all starts with us. And I like the whole thought process of lifestyle for environment, for a country like India, which is, there's a lot of duality in this country, right? It is absolutely apt for a country like India. And hence, for all of us, we need to be really stepping up in our own personal life, and then maybe effect will eventually come the way we want it to be.
Thank you. I have been given instruction by the organizers that we need to wrap up. I'll just take 2 minutes to, I'm sorry, but you'll have to ask questions. Do I have the time? Okay, yeah.
Please.
In the back there, yeah.
There was one person. Okay, sorry.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
So maybe maybe this might, okay, let me introduce myself first. I'm Murli Nagarajan. I'm a storyteller in the energy industry and a marketer in the energy industry. Would like to, really end by what Venkat just shared. And I think, the sentence which was told in 1930 by H.G. Wells, which said, there's a race between education and annihilation. And I think that's the point we are really looking at. We are moving very fast towards annihilation. And I think the point between worry to concern to desperation has actually come in. So I think it's not about whether we're going to make change or not. I think it's going to be about whether we're going to be revolutionary about it or not. And whether we're going to be trailblazing this or not in India. So I think, we being holding the maximum population across the world, I think we should be trailblazers in this, is what I feel. And I feel that we definitely need a major communication revolution happening across to be able to get it across so that, and more so with the privileged class, so that the privileged class really understand that, hey, we're all very educated, but you're cutting the branch on which you're sitting. And you're not just going to fall, you're going to make a number of people fall they are not responsible for that fall. So I think, how can we really up the level of this conversation to a bigger, that's what I would think about as a storyteller and a communications person. And towards that, I also feel that there's this huge conversation happening on what we call as triple bottom line communication or triple bottom line accounting. So if there could be things which could really work where companies are rewarded for being able to do that in a bigger way, and there is recognition all across towards this, I think it could accelerate the process. And I don't think any amount of acceleration would be less today. So that's what I really wanted to say.
No, absolutely, very well said. Couldn't agree more than what you have said. Yes, we need quite a bit of strong communication. I think right from the beginning of this conversation on the panel, we have been talking about it, and I'm sure AEEE also has a role to play here. Satish and myself and all our member companies are talking about it. And yeah, we need more AEEEs, we need more feeds, we need more and more, let's say, conversations like you had. We need more storytellers like you. So all we need is more and more, and we need it now. Time is running, and we need to really catch up.
So I think maybe all of us, when we go back from here, could be the starting point of a new communication, actually.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why not?
Sorry, that's all the time we had. I invite you all up for a group photo.
All right.
I'd like to invite Mr. Jayanta Chaudhary to felicitate our panel. Okay, that brings us to the close of the first day of Feed. Thanks for being here with us for a very engaging, exciting, lots of discussions. If you're not coming tomorrow, then please drop your lanyards on the way out, but we hope to see all of you here again for another exciting day tomorrow. Thank you.